the surveillance videotape would finally identify, especially in today's technology and forensic abilities of, videotape to identify a face, would identify John Doe 2.
Mhm.
My belief is that he was one of the Aryan Republican Army. Those guys are known. Their identities are known. McVeigh said they were on the ground with him that day. But another possibility, strong possibility, is that there were more federal operatives in the picture, around the truck, in the frame of the camera, on the street, who might be identifiable.
Okay. Yeah, to be fair, it's not that I don't believe you. I approach everything nowadays. I think in
Skepticism
like
is great.
well, and I think like back when I think of like 20 to 20-year-old, even like 18, 19, 20, smoking a lot of weed, Bridget would have been like all in on this with no stop. No. So there's part of me that's just more skeptical because old me bought every conspiracy theory. And I think part of the overall problem I'm seeing in society in general is that there's people are losing their grip on reality and they generally just go crazy. One of the things I loved about Charlie Kirk was that he constantly was telling people to find truth and search for meaning in like a wife, a family, things that are tangible. And
Mhm.
a lot of the other voices in our space are telling people to basically go crazy and not give them any grounding. And then we had 2 shootings. You talk about vets. We had 2 shootings last weekend that aren't getting very much attention, and they were both vets. The one that was the LDS
Yes,
bomb
yes,
was a vet.
absolutely.
And so I think, and we were talking about this on in my dumpster fire writers room, just when when things are already ratcheted up to 11 and you have people who are just barely hanging on as it is, those people are gonna spin out. And I feel like it's our duty, and I try to it's my duty as somebody who's trying to make sense of all of this, to try and like keep coming back to how do we ground ourselves in this? How do we so that we don't spin out? Because the human psyche is incredibly fragile, as you've seen from your 20 years of delving into the depths of all
Yeah.
of this web of madness, and also all your work before that with the America's Most Wanted and all of those cases. So I appreciate the work you're doing and writing the book and actually being an on the ground journalist who interviews people like Terry Nichols and is speaking to these and getting Freedom of Information Act, doing journalistic work and not just like uh your theories are grounded in
Fact,
actual fact.
fact.
Yeah.
You make a great point, and your frustration, I feel it, and I share it. It's the moment.
Mm,
I know I have a long career, goes way back further than yours, Bridget. And what I say to myself is the editors left the room. And when I said earlier, this social media moment, it's a jungle, it's jungle
yep.
warfare. Um, it used to be, I mean, I think way back to early in my journalism career in Washington, D.C., when I was an editor at National Journal. I mean, a very buttoned down, policy oriented weekly magazine, right? But everything in the newsroom was completely orderly. And in the
Mhm.
middle of it was the glass walled office of the editor. And he was a wonderful man, and he would sitting there and smoke his pipe. And if people had a problem or a question, they would like go into his office and it would be resolved. Those figures across the landscape of journalism have just they're extinct.
Yeah.
Now, when journalism surrendered to political activism on both sides of, the
Journalism.
spectrum, it left us without those trusted arbiters. And
Mhm.
now we're in a free-for-all. And that's what you feel and see and sort of want to look away from on the Charlie Kirk case. And I completely get that. I try not to go too many bridges too far in what I think about that, because it's really too soon to say, but there are some red flags. And
Mhm.
um, so we
And
all
you would
have
be
to,
the one who would notice them.
yes, we all have to uh, be our own arbiters. Like, your question, who do you believe? I mean, that's what
Who do you believe?
in uh, on the Oklahoma City? Who do I believe?
No, in
Oh,
general, where do you get your news? Who do you trust? Who do you go to for any kind of sense
I
making?
try to watch, and that's a really good question. I try to keep my eye on what used to be the pillars of journalism. Um, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. I feel like there's been such a seismic shift there that I don't trust the New York Times as I once did. And I mean, I grew up in Washington D.C., and the Washington Post was revered. So I mean, I'm in the social media jungle now.
Mhm.
Um, I I there are names, individuals that I trust, and I think we're heading that way. I'm old school, and I listen to Bill O'Reilly every day. I've listened to him like ever since Fox, and somehow I find him to be a steady voice of reason on what's going on. Um,
Mhm.
but but we have evolved now from institutions to individuals, and it's only starting, whether where
Mhm.
if you start that firmament of people from, Megyn Kelly to, you know, Joe Rogan to,
Mhm.
whoever your choices are, those are individuals. And
Right.
um, a while back we were talking about, um, again, who do you believe? And I I look at that foray of mine into maximum security prisons to talk to criminals. And I mean, you know, that's a truly wacky proposition to try to come out with a germ of the truth. And you eventually have to ask yourself, it's almost like, if someone will tell you something that goes against their interest, that you can have trust in that,
Mhm.
and that was the case with John Matthews, the whistleblower. He had nothing to gain and everything to lose, and has been put through major uh, pain for telling Jesse what he told him. So,
Mhm.
and recently, jumping outside this story, but I felt that when in the in the Epstein files, we haven't talked about that, but
I know, I was
yeah,
thinking about this the whole time too.
but when they sent the U.S. attorney in to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, right? That was a big moment this summer, and I
Mhm.
connected to that because it was like when I went to interview Terry Nichols.
Mhm.
And your question is like, the person, the criminal you're talking to has an agenda. So how do you know, I mention this now because I think in a way, it's kind of scary to say this, but in a way, we are all now in that situation of having to go on a case-by-case basis and ask ourselves, based on all the facts I can line up, do I believe this person I'm interviewing for whatever reason in whatever venue is telling me the truth? And,
Mhm.
and I think our journalism is going to evolve now. I'm not sure. I think it's headed for this individual, um, kind of these individual pillars that we rely on. Uh, but it's not. It's obviously not Walter Cronkite anymore. So,
No.
or even 60 Minutes or the New York Times.
And
What
you
do you
can't check,
think?
you can't even it's so frustrating because even things like fact checkers, like, I was just talking to my, I have a show on Two Way as well, and I was talking to he's like the new he's a new CEO actually, and he comes from a long line of new media, and we were talking about essentially how journalism is dead and the lack of trust in new media, old media, all media, and what a like we're kind of entering, we've been in this post-truth era, but now things are really ramping up. And how do you find any semblance of sense making? And I was able to talk to recently the ambassador of Taiwan to Israel, and she was saying that in the post, this is just fascinating. The way they dealt with COVID, it created a lot of trust between the government and the citizens because they basically did the complete opposite of what China was doing. They
Hmm.
kept everything open. They really tried to keep them updated on whatever the local, the fact that like we were censoring doctors from with the most recent research from Europe, it was just, this is creating a huge lack of distrust between your citizenry and your government.
Uh-huh.
And they
Uh-huh.
didn't have that problem because of the way that they handled COVID. And I think a lot of what we're experiencing now is all of these kids who are losing their minds and being activated online, the lack of distrust in literally everything. This is all downstream of the way our government handled or mishandled COVID. And they also do something, the kids, they've created this culture of fact checking and skepticism. So it's cool to not believe everything you see. It's
Mhm.
cool to take in all this information, but they teach media literacy in their schools. They teach them to be skeptical of basically everything. And the government, when there is misinformation or disinformation that goes around, the government has this policy of it's the three twos, and it's 200 words, 2 images within 2 hours to
Huh.
combat whatever the misinformation is with what is the truth or whatever is against this mis or disinformation that's going around. And then they have these, it's like become cool to be a fact checker. These like, yeah, it's like cool amongst the youth, according to her. Now that that's all
Interesting.
fine and good, but we don't even trust our fact checkers because even those have been shown to be ideologically captured. So Snopes has been shown to be ideologically captured. Wikipedia has been shown to be captured by an ideology. So we are in a place where you can't even you can't if you can't go verify something with primary sources in your own eyes, I don't know. It's very interesting to see,
It's a huge,
everybody losing their mind.
huge dilemma.